Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Aaron Viner.
In our top story, the Israeli Security Cabinet voted to accept an Egyptian-sponsored ceasefire to end Operation Protective Edge against the Hamas terrorist organization, which has fired more than 1,000 rockets into Israeli population centers. The halt in hostilities was to have taken effect at 9 o'clock last Tuesday morning. Hamas rejected the ceasefire, calling the agreement a joke. A senior member of the Al-Qassam Brigade said that accepting the offer would be to surrender and that his terrorist organization will intensify its fight against the enemy, Israel. Hamas terrorists immediately fired dozens more missiles into southern Israel, killing an Israeli man, a father of 3, who had volunteered to distribute food and water to soldiers deployed along the Gaza border. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the Israeli army to resume Operation Protective Edge.
U.S. President Barack Obama hosted a group of Muslim Americans at the White House to celebrate the Islamic holiday of Ramadan last week. He told the group that the U.S. would continue to do everything that it can to facilitate a return to the 2012 ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, referring to the agreement reached at the end of Operation Pillar of Defense, which never resulted in a cessation of violence against Israel. Hamas continued to fire on the civilian population of Israel in the interim, while utilizing the opportunity to replenish its weapons supply that includes Iranian-made long-range missiles that it used to fire on major Israeli population centers during this recent escalation. Obama's behavior during this relentless attack on Israel garnered a great deal of criticism from U.S. politicians, and Yochanan has more on that story.
Yes, Aaron. During Operation Protective Edge, U.S. President Barack Obama reached out to Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas, but basically shunned Israel. As rockets rained down on Israeli children, Obama called on Israel to exercise restraint against the Hamas terrorist organization. The White House has fought hard to continue the flow of U.S. tax dollars to the Palestinians, despite their alliance with the Hamas terror group, which has prompted several U.S. congressmen to speak out against the president. In an address to the House of Representatives, Congressman Trent Frank said, "Last month, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas openly united with the evil terrorist group Hamas, and they are raining rockets down upon the innocent citizens of Israel." The Arizona lawmaker went on to say that half of all Israelis have sought cover in bomb shelters across the country, and the Obama administration has had the reprehensible gall to praise Abbas. Congressman Franks added that, "I thought nothing this president could say or do would surprise me anymore, but his flushed and breathless rush to embrace terrorists launching rockets at Israeli children is an unprecedented act of cowardice and betrayal."
The Secretary General of the United Nations came out against Israel during the recent escalation in Gaza. At the height of the rocket fire against Israel, Ban Ki-moon released a statement expressing his feeling of responsibility for the Palestinians, saying that they have long been denied the sense of freedom and dignity that they deserve. Ban failed to mention the oppression of Palestinians by their leaders, not Israel, nor that since the Hamas takeover of Gaza, the Palestinians have been held hostage by the terrorist regime. The UN chief also failed to call on Hamas to cease its rocket fire against the civilian population of Israel, nor commend the Jewish state for its extensive efforts to avoid civilian casualties during Operation Protective Edge.
Despite the barrage of rockets on Israel from Gaza, the Jewish state continued to permit humanitarian aid into Gaza and continued to treat Palestinians in Israeli hospitals. During the height of Operation Protective Edge, Israel allowed hundreds of trucks filled with food products and aid supplies to pass into the Hamas-run enclave. Israel also allowed the shipment of more than 200,000 liters of fuel each day in an attempt to prevent a humanitarian crisis. Israel went to great lengths to protect civilian lives during the conflict, using tactics such as dropping thousands of leaflets written in Arabic, warning citizens to evacuate certain areas of the Gaza Strip. Israel also instituted a new warning shot that makes a large noise on the rooftop of a building targeted by the Air Force. Hamas, however, knocked out the power to the Gaza Strip and desperately tried to endanger its own civilian population in order to inflate the number of casualties during Operation Protective Edge. Aaron has more on that story.
That's right, Yochanan. After reports surfaced that more than 4,000 Palestinians had evacuated their homes and fled to UN shelters in the Gaza Strip, Hamas leaders threatened Gaza citizens, demanding that they return to the line of fire. The terrorist group sent out a message ordering the population that fled to immediately return and to not leave their homes and to follow Hamas directives. The group's leaders openly called for the Palestinians to become human shields to protect their fighters and to become martyrs.
The Islamic terror group ISIS, which has taken over large portions of Iraq and Syria, has obtained low-grade uranium. ISIS reportedly stole a stockpile of enriched uranium from a university in Mosul. The International Atomic Energy Agency has attempted to downplay the threat that the weaponized uranium poses, but other experts have spoken out, saying that the Islamic terrorist group now holds the materials to create a dirty bomb. The IAEA has also confirmed that members of the ruthless terrorist organization now possess Saddam Hussein's chemical weapon stockpile. When U.S. President Barack Obama ordered American troops to leave Iraq and abandon Iraqi citizens and their security forces, they also left behind thousands of warheads containing mustard and sarin nerve gas. The chemical weapons were stored on an Iraqi army base, which was captured by ISIS last month.
In the wake of Operation Protective Edge, hundreds of Jews found themselves trapped in a Paris synagogue, while angry Muslim rioters attempted to storm the house of worship. According to French authorities, pro-Palestinian activists, armed with bats, bricks, rocks, and chairs stolen from cafes, beat security forces assigned to protect the synagogue. And in a related story, an anti-Israel protest staged outside the Israeli consulate in Boston turned violent when a small group of pro-Israel students were attacked by Palestinian supporters. The victims said that they were violently assaulted, called Jesus killers, and told that they will burn. On another front, a pro-Israel rally in Los Angeles was interrupted when violent pro-Palestinian activists beat Israeli supporters with sticks. Christians present at the rally, reportedly wearing signs declaring their support of Israel, were also put in harm's way during the clashes of the pro-Palestinian activists.
In other news, Skytran and Israel Aerospace Industries have announced their plans to build a suspended transit system in Tel Aviv. This will be the first project of its kind, and if successful, more are planned in the United States and India. Skytran is an innovative transit system which allows two passengers to travel at high speeds in capsules suspended from elevated tracks. The first phase of the project will allow passengers to travel at speeds up to 70 kilometers per hour. Later during the commercial phase, passengers could hit speeds up to 240 kilometers an hour. Skytran's CEO Jerry Sanders said that Tel Aviv is an ideal city to test the pilot project because Tel Aviv is a destination for people from around the world and a center of commerce. The company has already begun preparations for a commuter line which will stretch about 3 miles through the heart of the city and accommodate 12,000 people an hour. The commuter line is estimated to cost about $50 million.
The Birthright Israel program just celebrated a major milestone, recently marking its 400,000th participant. Birthright funds 10-day trips to Israel for Jewish students who have never visited their homeland. The visits aim to strengthen each participant's identity as a Jew while fostering friendship and a lasting bond with the land and people of Israel, while reinforcing solidarity of the Jewish people worldwide. The CEO of Taglit Birthright, Giddy Mark, said the organization reached a remarkable milestone in its ongoing mission for global Jewish continuity, and that the 400,000 participants represent a strong and active bond between Israel and the diaspora. He went on to say that the group will continue to provide hundreds of thousands of young Jews with the opportunity to explore Israel, the heart of Jewish culture, history, and its people, so that they may rediscover and create a personal bond with their faith and the global community. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein and we're here on our beautiful rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Major R.A. Shalakar from the IDF spokesperson's office. Major Shalakar, thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure.
Well, we're in week 2 of Operation Protective Edge. Tell our viewers a little about what is this operation all about?
We're trying to fight the Islamists, the terrorists inside the Gaza Strip with every means possible. Since days, they're attacking our population here with hundreds of rockets. We try to strike their infrastructure, make sure that we strike their capabilities, fight terror, and make sure that we bring back quiet to the people of Israel.
What's been really unbelievable to me is that there's been so many strikes from the IDF on Gaza, yet very little comparatively casualties. It seems like you're taking very painstaking precautions to stop the casualties on the other side. Why being so careful? Why not just go in there and wipe out the terrorist infrastructure?
See, we're not interested in harming anyone uninvolved. We do our utmost to make sure that we strike the terrorists. That's our aim. Whereas the other side, Hamas terrorists, they aim rockets on cities, on Ashdod and Tel Aviv. They try to kill civilians, while we try to make sure that civilians are not being harmed. We try to be as precise as possible and to strike only terrorists. That's what our aim is.
Is this strategy working? Is it having an effect on the Hamas terrorists?
We think so. We see that Hamas is under pressure. We see that we strike hundreds of weapons, manufacturing sites, rocket launchers, concealed, some of them. You have tunnels, hundreds of tunnels all over the place there. You do everything to strike them. They're under pressure, but they continue launching rockets, and we have to continue with this operation until they understand it's not worth to try and kill innocent people.
There's been reports that Hamas terrorists and their missile caches are under schools, under hospitals. At what point does the IDF say enough is enough and just take out that terrorist infrastructure, not having to worry about the civilian casualties because they have to protect the citizens of Israel?
Well, first of all, you're very right. It's a very cruel reality where you have terrorists actually exploiting their own people. They use them as human shields. You have rockets being launched from kindergartens, mosques, from all kinds of apartments, rooftops. And not only that, they launch rockets from rooftops and all kinds of civilian populated areas. They even ask the civilian population to stand close by. If you ask me, I wouldn't wonder if they would tell the people to sleep on the rockets even. Now, we see that it's asymmetrical. We try to be as precise as possible, and to make sure that they understand it's not worth to fight us, we will continue operating against them.
Despite this terror campaign from Hamas on Israeli civilians, world leaders, even the President of the United States, have come out and asked for calm on both sides. That'd be like, Benjamin Netanyahu asking for calms on both sides after September 11th, saying that Al-Qaeda and the United States have to lower tensions. Why is there a disconnect? Why doesn't the world leadership understand that this is just a straight and simple terrorist campaign against the civilian population?
Well, we see there is two sides to the conflict. We have one democracy, it's Israel, it's one state with an army trying to protect its people with its own weapons. And on the other side, you have a terror organization, an Islamist militant terror organization called Hamas, and the other organization inside the Gaza Strip using the civilian population to kill innocent people. There's only one party to this conflict who cares about casualties, which is us. It's a very sad reality which we face, but that's all about it. We hope the world understands what we are facing on our border, and hopefully the world will support us in fighting terror to make sure that peace and quiet is going to come back to this area.
The real star of this conflict is the Iron Dome system that has been incredible at knocking out the missiles, limiting casualties on the Israeli side to almost nothing. Tell us about the Iron Dome system.
Well, we have invested many years and developed a defensive technology called Iron Dome. we try to protect our civilian population with this Iron Dome. It's not a perfect system, but it helps our people in the army or the politicians to take rational decisions. In the end, you have to take your time when you have to evaluate and to assess the situation to make sure that you strike the terrorists and only the terrorists. Now, Iron Dome is helpful, but it's not a solution to terror in the end. You have to strike terror effectively. So you have defensive and offensive capabilities with the hope that we're going to make sure that in a few days this is going to be over.
Over 1,000 rockets launched on the civilian population of Israel in our major cities, and the casualty rate has been almost nothing. How much of this is the preparedness of the IDF and the Iron Dome system, and how much of this is the God of Israel?
I believe there's many factors and many different points which we could mention here, which help us to protect the people of Israel. From my part, as an army, as a soldier, I have to say that we are perfectly doing everything in our power to make sure that we protect the people of Israel with weapons. Iron Dome is part of it. It's defensive. We invested lots of money in it, time, and we see it works. But again, it's not a perfect solution. We hope terrorists one day will understand it's not worth to fight innocent people.
What is the end game of Operation Protective Edge? What do you want to see come out of this? When will this end?
Our main aim would be that there will be quiet to the people of Israel and that the terrorists stop launching rockets on innocent people.
Major Shalakar, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I hope your audience understands that we are in a defensive operation, even though we are also offensive, but you're trying to strike terrorists to make sure that quiet is coming back. Only thing we want on our side is quiet. We want peace. We always wanted peace. The state of Israel wants peace. The army wants peace and quiet. No one on this part, on our part, is interested in any escalation, any conflict, any operation whatsoever since the foundation of the state of Israel. We hope that one day terrorists all around us are going to understand that we are ready and willing to protect our lives, our right to live here, to exist here in our homeland.
Thank you, Major Shalakar, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
This is Jerusalem, Israel's capital city. It's an ancient and modern treasure that is beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
The IDF has embarked on a mission to restore security to the citizens of Israel. Hamas arms itself year-round with thousands of rockets used to attack Israeli civilians. These rockets can strike deep into Israeli territory, placing nearly all of the population at risk. This means that millions of Israelis live under a constant terror threat. Gaza terrorists have a clear goal: to disrupt everyday life in Israel and murder innocent civilians. During Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, the IDF crippled Hamas terror infrastructure in the Gaza Strip in response to rocket fire against civilians. Since the operation, Hamas has upgraded its weapons arsenal. The terrorist organization now holds about 10,000 rockets and missiles. Hamas produces most of these weapons inside Gaza, but many of them come from Iran. The Qassam rocket, armed with a 9-kilogram warhead, can strike up to 17.7 kilometers from its target. The upgraded Grad rocket carries a 45-kilogram warhead and can strike targets 48 kilometers away from Gaza. It endangers over 1 million Israelis. The M75, with a 60-kilogram warhead, it has a strike range of 75 kilometers. Like the Fajr 5, another Hamas rocket, is one of the most dangerous rockets in the Hamas arsenal and threatens about 3.5 million Israelis. On a daily basis, terrorist organizations use civilian infrastructure to carry out their terror attacks. Even buildings that appear civilian in nature are often used as rocket manufacturing facilities, weapon storage sites, and terror command centers. Terrorists intentionally occupy civilian buildings, knowing that the IDF does not want to harm the local population. When these buildings are used for terror activities, they become legitimate targets under international law. Although Israel makes every effort to minimize harm to civilians when striking these targets, it has the right to protect citizens from terrorism.
العدو الصهيوني ليس لديه أي بنك أهداف، لديه
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation by a lake. But this is the Sea of Galilee. The wonders of Israel are beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
The Israeli cities and communities which immediately surround the Gaza Strip desperately need our help. The people living in these areas suffer considerably from the constant threat of rocket fire produced by the conflict in Gaza.
We are here in Kfar Asa, which is just a few miles away from the border to the Gaza Strip. And yesterday evening at 8:20 a siren was ringing here in the village, and 10 seconds later a rocket came down here into the village and was hitting here this art gallery. It's a place where normally at this time children would be taught, but thanks God yesterday evening there were no children there was no teacher there, so nobody got injured.
The flying time of a rocket, depends where it's launched from, is approximately 20 seconds. So if the launch is picked up, we have anything from 0 to 20 seconds warning. Sometimes we have no warning, or we have a warning the same time as the explosion. Depends what size of missile, where it's fired from, and so on. Now, there is no way to protect ourselves against the rockets because the Iron Dome system, which is so effective for Ashkelon and Beersheba and Tel Aviv, needs about 15 seconds to activate from launch to hitting the missile. So it's effective from a longer range, not from the short range. So we have no protection besides to get our heads into a bomb shelter as quick as possible. And this is ultimately what happens.
It's happened here, but you don't see it. So you start knocking on the door and it's locked. And you say, what can I do now? Maybe the people die inside, or I don't know. And at the end you come inside and you see that there's a hole in the roof, and the motor, the shell motor tail is on the couch, and the whole room is ruined. And you say, thanks God that the family is in Eilat.
you see behind me is that we are putting a bomb shelter there which will serve a youth community here in the kibbutz Kfar Saba, and the weight of this bomb shelter is 16 tons, and it will provide approximately 16 people safety when the sirens are going on. Right behind that hill where the truck is standing, maybe 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers from here is Gaza. So this is a community which is hit very often by Katyushas and by mortar attacks. So this bomb shelter will for sure save lives in the future.
Please consider helping us to provide life-saving protection to the people living in these communities. One portable bomb shelter costs $16,000 US. Your donation of any size will help the ICEJ to bring a sense of security to the children, youth and elderly in these affected areas, and more importantly, it will help save lives.
It's time for the people in Israel to know that there are millions of Christians, lovers of the Bible, lovers of the Old Testament, lovers of the state of Israel, Christian Zionists around the world, millions. The people in Israel is not aware of that. And sometimes you feel yourself certain excuse to explain, yes, I'm here in order to help you. What are you helping us? You are helping us, starting from that bombing shelter which just have been located, and ongoing to political support all around the world. And that's amazing.
Oh. Thanks so much. Toda
Rabba. Thanks so, my dear friend.
I want to read something to you which I looked up for you, and it's a quote that was made by Martin Luther King many years ago. It says, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in time of challenge and controversy." That's when you judge your true friends, not when they sit in an armchair and we discuss over a glass of wine what to do. When we're in trouble, that's when you have friends. That's when you find your friends. Ganz auch auf Deutsch so.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Ilrom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.